It's God Squad Day. Welcome to the very first webcast of God Squad. Today I'm talking with Jay Hogewood and Matt Reimer. Jay is here in New Orleans, one of my colleagues on St. Charles Avenue, and Matt formerly was and has now returned to his home in New York City. And we're talking about COVID-19, what it is to be isolated in our homes, how do we make faith community online, how do we make meaning in times of catastrophe and fear and panic and injustice. How are we staying sane? How are we caring for ourselves? How are we caring for each other and for our neighbors? And maybe there's a laugh or two in there as well. So I hope you enjoy the inaugural conversation from the God Squad. It's good to see you guys. I'm glad that we're back together. So Matt Reimer, Jay Hogewood, why don't you introduce yourselves, tell us where you are and what you're up to these days professionally.
All right, thanks, Jay. Rabbi Matt Reimer. The reason why I know these two beautiful souls, Jay and Elizabeth, is because I was the senior rabbi for 3 years at Temple Sinai in New Orleans, and now I am back in my old stomping grounds of the Lower East Side of New York City, where I am the rabbi and director of community engagement for JCC Brooklyn, 3 sites throughout North Brooklyn. And I serve them as both rabbi and community engager in lots of different and hopefully meaningful ways. That is my gig now, but I'm excited to be with the two of you. We always have a good time together.
Yeah, we do indeed. We miss you. We miss you, Rabbi, big time. It's good to see your face. I am Jay Hogewood, pastor of Rain Memorial United Methodist Church, RAYNE, and have been here almost 3 years here in New Orleans, and am grateful, Elizabeth, to be here with you as a colleague, Rabbi, with you, Matt. It's good to see your faces together. Thank you for the chance to be here.
I'm so happy. I just want us to hang out. It's good to see you guys. So I'm Elizabeth Lott, and I'm pastor at St. Charles Avenue Baptist, which is not too far away from where Jay is, and was very close to where Matt was. But now we're all in our separate corners of the world, it feels like. I appreciate you wanting to play this little game with me and get creative and experiment in this time of us doing everything online. I thought it might be fun, or maybe fun's not the right word. I thought it might be good to start with the three of us, given we're in New York and New Orleans, two of the biggest hot spots for COVID-19. And I wanted to talk with y'all about what's life like for you right now. How are you doing? What's going on where you are?
Who's up? Jay, you want to go?
Yeah, I'll take a swing, Matt. It is full of silver linings. I'm going to start there because experientially, my situation, I'm grateful that while there have been direct impacts from the virus on some congregants, to be honest, I keep expecting worse. And so that is a complicated perspective in that I don't want to say that I'm happy by any means. However, I am finding some peace in day-to-day operations like this with Zoom meetings and the opportunity to connect in ways that, to be honest, I never have before, at least to this quantity. So measures being taken in place for our congregation means no in-person, or there are still 2 in-person ministries. But 97% of what we do is change. The 2 that remain in person are very measured, very safe with food distribution, which we feel like is an essential effort and mission here. But otherwise, I bottomed out a couple days ago of despair, and last Wednesday felt very heavy, very grave. I deal with anxiety generally, almost clinically, and my anxiety usually doesn't go to depression. It usually goes to frenetic, do more. And last Wednesday, it went to a darker place. And so I'm grateful that's changed, but that's existentially. For our community, it's highly different than our normal New Orleans uptown, being together, rubbing elbows, literally at different bars and celebration, and even in this holy week for the Christian tradition, or Pesachim, of course, upcoming. There's a far different experience, viscerally, corporeally, because we are separate. So that's a complicated answer. I'm hopeful. I'm so much more hopeful today than I have been, and reminded of I'm reminded of community, because I'm here with you two, frankly.
That's nice, Jay. Thank you for that. Liz, who wins the bet for when Jay throws in that first Hebrew word? You or me? I don't remember. The over under.
I giggled a little bit. How many will there be? Is the question.
How many?
He'll break out some
session is early.
Just a little bit.
The session is early. A lot of what you're saying, Jay, resonates with me. It is interesting that I moved from New Orleans to New York, from one hot spot to another, and New York is really in it. I'm trying to figure out the different roles, as rabbi, as Abba, as father, as husband, to somebody who's very much on the front lines. My wife is an anesthesiologist, and she is in it every day, and it's I guess scary is the easiest adjective to come up with, but it's pretty profound. I guess that's another adjective. It is really serious stuff. I never thought I'd text these words to a friend the other day, but I was driving earlier this week, or maybe over the weekend, who can keep track of the days, and I was going to pick up a hazmat suit for my wife. Words that I never thought I'd text before. So, there is a reality to everything that's happening. And then at the same time, sort of stepping out of that reality, I have done my best. Let me change that. I have tried to do my best, failing more times than not, but I have tried to do my best to really understand and appreciate what having time means. Now, with that being said, every day, and I'll be brief, but every day feels like the day is done before I even catch my breath, because I have 4 little girls at home that I'm doing school with, trying to do my work for Pesach, for Passover, trying to respond. And I do want to get into some of the work that we're doing with our congregants and for me, with my families. But doing all of that work, time just zooms by. And at the same time, it is clear that we have hit this pause button on the freneticness of life. And so I'm encouraging me and my girls and my family, and of course my family's in Brooklyn, to ask the question, what do we do with our time? And I don't think it's a cliche, and I don't think it's a platitude to ask, what do we do to ensure that our minutes count? That's not to say that every minute counts, because some minutes we just need to get over. And particularly when those dark minutes come to us, and even dark hours, and I'm right there with you, brother. Those hours, at one hand, we want them to pass, as the text says, sorry to go there, Gamza Ya'avor, this too shall pass. But at the same time, I think there's great power and great even comfort to sit with our despair and to sit with our sadness. If on the rare occasion one of my little girls comes up to me and tells me that they're scared, I want to go into that scare with them. I want to go into that fear with them. And I want to figure out, what does that mean for my 7-year-old? And what does that mean for this 45-year-old? And I want to figure it out together. And I think that one of the things that time gives us is the ability to actually be in that space together.
So you have me thinking, so I'm completely with you, Jay, on the anxiety, and mine is like full on generalized anxiety that I manage in all kinds of ways, sometimes better than others. And so I've for sure been feeling it. And for me, it's always a physical, like heart palpitations, pressure in the chest, like true. And my impulse is, well, I need to get away from that. I need to push away from that. I need to make that stop. So you said a couple of things, Matt, that I'm thinking, like the first is about just letting it be, and, very, kind of like the practice of mindfulness or the interruptions of meditation, right? Like not judge it, not be attached to it, let it be, ask questions about it, be curious about that anxiety and that despair. But also when you're talking about time, and that we have like more to do and less to do and more time and like it's all of this at once, I almost wonder, is this thing that I'm feeling that's right here in my chest, is it wanting me to like speed up and get busy again, because then I get away from some of those existential questions that we're carrying always, but our culture of busyness allows us just to stay above them, because who's got time, because we're crazy busy. So yeah, good questions. We're in it with kids stuff too. We only have 2 of them at home, but I find that I either feel like I'm shortchanging them, or I'm shortchanging the church, or shortchanging my marriage, and then classic, so then I come last. So I'm trying really hard to make space to go for a walk. We live by the lake, to head up to the lake and listen to the water hit the shore. We put out a hummingbird feeder today to see if we could entice them to hang out in our backyard a little bit.
Oh,
so
nice.
How are we doing? It sounds like we're all over the place, but in the same groove. Professionally, as faith leaders, what's our role in all of this? What's our role as people who provide spiritual care and guidance to congregations and groups?
Yeah, so in seminary, I was taught this really neat Hebrew English trick that I think has really become a powerful speaking point for me now, or thinking point rather, that we were taught that there are times that we should be, as clergy, as people of faith, as pastoral leaders, we should be an aid, A-I-D, and in other times we need to be, in Hebrew, aid, ayin dalid, means witness. And so the relationship between these two ideas has always been a powerful one for me, but particularly right now when I send emails to my families, and more importantly, when I get those email responses or texts or even phone calls. In fact, just earlier today, I was on a call with a family in Brooklyn. I think most of the call was spent being silent. And I don't mean me, I mean both of us. I think that we were just being on the phone together, knowing that we're in it together, knowing that we're trying to live day by day, trying to figure out if we have enough toilet paper and sanitizer. And at the same time, asking questions, how do we make sense of all this for our kids, for ourselves? Being that AID aid and Ayin Dalid witness is really powerful for me right now.
Yeah, that's a profound observation, Matt. I love that, and I think the sense of witness speaks strongly to me. That it seems like in intervals through the week, these past 4 weeks have been via connections like this to sort of purvey peace. And sometimes I actually feel that, and sometimes I do not, and I'm faking it. And I'm grateful that, as you said, I feed off of, if it's okay to say it that way, or I receive other people's peace. As you all have, very gifted congregants, I'm reminded at Rain, we have no less than 22 healthcare professionals.
Wow.
And they are nurses and physical therapists, occupational therapists, and doctors. And how I noticed that every morning I'm trying to text them a brief prayer, thinking of you, praying for you, thanks be to God for you. And I noticed there that I am commuting, transferring whatever it is at 7:30 in the morning I feel of hopefulness onto them. And then by about, 8 o'clock, 30 minutes later, I need someone to commute, to transfer peace to me. And invariably it comes when I'm looking for it. So I think witnessing is that reciprocity. We receive and we share. We receive and we share. And then the other part is, you alluded to it in the phone call, is present, and paradoxically in such a different way. But your presence now here, my presence with you, in a completely other way,
Right.
is
Right.
It's a miracle. And I don't want to take for granted, Matt, you alluded to it earlier, and Elizabeth, you've said it. I don't want to forsake or forget the miracle of our own assembling, as the epistles of Hebrews reminds us from long ago, that we can, as I have, taken for granted assembling together, and therefore assembling together in new ways, renewed ways like this. So I think that said, witness and presence, being present to each other in some different ways. A good old-fashioned telephone call means so much more these days to me than it would have a month ago.
Yeah.
I had just started working with a coach. I'm still working with her through this time. She's actually near you, Matt. So she's somewhere in the lower Manhattan area. I can't remember which side though. Anyway, so I've been working with this coach on burnout and leader fatigue and all of that stuff. And one of the questions that she kept asking me was about being really clear on what's my role and what's not. And so it's been really helpful for me as somebody who, when I am in that high functioning anxiety, because like you, Jay, it can drive me. Boy, I can crank some work when that anxiety is pumping. What is the role that only I can play? Or what is the role that the universe, that my community most needs for me to play right now for this collective moment? And I keep thinking about when my kids were really little. The mail came. This is going to go nuts for a minute. When my kids were really little, which really doesn't happen anymore, and it's dark, and you go in fumbling, you just say, I'm here. And before they can even see you, before they can even really make sense of what's happening in that moment, there's just that of, I'm here, I showed up, you're not alone. And so these Zoom calls, man, they can be exhausting. There's some 6 Zoom calls, but then sometimes it can be this wonderful gift, like right now. And so we have used Zoom for a couple of times a week at the church. And it's just a beautiful thing to see people show up, to see like 50 or 65 or 75 people who want to just show up for each other. And so then, I know it's so obnoxious to talk about holding space. Everybody holds space and makes space and shares space, but whatever. I mean, so I hold Zoom rooms, that's fine. And I get to show up and say, I'm here, you're not alone. And then on those days that I am in my head too much or in my despair too much, then they show up for me.
Elizabeth, I'm jumping in real quick, and I appreciate this sense of presence and absence. And I can't help but riff real quick on the first words in our tradition as Christians at the empty tomb is, nothing's here. No one's here. And it's like, oh, what do we do? In that sense of the power of paradox, is that the presence of the divine that I want and I need and I want to share, sometimes, just as you said, is difficult to grasp. But I appreciate greatly that you two say with much more clarity than I, that sense of presence, that you and your role, Elizabeth, you and your role, Matt, as spouse, as parent, as pastor, as rabbi, you convey. I mean, I know I've felt it before. Many times we've been together, and now your presence demonstrates, animates, enlivens goodness and compassion and mercy.
Can I again, just to bounce off of that, because it's perfect. And you mentioned Holy Week, and of course tomorrow night is the first night of Passover. And, you know, in part of telling this story is the story of Moses. And when Moses sees, you know, it's really powerful. When Moses sees the burning bush, um, Moses hears God, and God calls out Moses, Moses, and Moses instantly says, Hineni, here I am.
Mm.
And Moses doesn't say, here I am to do X, Y, and Z, as we are often wired to do these days, right? We got to get stuff done. We got to cross off that list. We got to get through all of our meetings and Zooms and all of our kids' classwork and submit it all. And he just says, Hineni, here I am. And showing up, as we often talk about, is half the ball game. Just showing up. And what we're learning, as Jay rightly points out, is whoever thought that you could show up by a text. You know, in fact, it wasn't too long ago that a text checking in, sometimes we might look at that as saying, oh, you know, that seems so impersonal.
Right.
How many texts have we gotten over the last couple of weeks that have really felt like someone is saying, Hineni, here I am?
Yeah. That's good stuff. So I'm wondering kind of our role in this, into being people who make meaning, who use words and symbol and metaphor and imagery and worship to make meaning out of life, out of chaos, out of the midst of where we find ourselves. We encourage or guide or aid, as you were saying, Matt, how do we encourage folks to make good meaning, to think theologically and reflect theologically about this time, or to answer the question, where is God in this? I have shared with both of y'all already that I'm, you know, driven nuts by the pastor in Baton Rouge who keeps saying his congregation is covered in the blood of Jesus, so they're not going to get COVID. That's ridiculous. And what a horrible understanding of Christian tradition and of divine source and eternal mystery. Is this a time where we might make some meaning, that we might play in those metaphors and help other people do the same?
Can I just answer that by way of two very quick stories? The first one is what I have been doing over the last couple of weeks is I'll make a short, you know, 1-2 minute video outside. I'm usually with 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 of my girls doing something. And we live right across the street from a Trader Joe's, and I made a little video. It just occurred to me. I mean, the line outside of Trader Joe's was just insane. It was crazy. It was bananas. And with social distancing, it made it even longer. And I started recording, and I started talking about the great Jewish scholar Moses Maimonides. And I was saying how Maimonides, and I'm filming it as I'm walking down the street with my daughters with the long line. I said, Maimonides has this incredible teaching about anger and patience. And he says very simply, if you're angry, count to 10. If you're still angry, keep counting. And there's something really profound about the simplicity of reminding ourselves that it is okay to be incredibly angry and frustrated and scared and impatient about everything that's happening. And most importantly, to know that this is not new. It's not like my anger is brand new to the universe. This has been going on for millennia. And it is helpful, at least for me, it's helpful to know that my anger is actually tied to my traditions past as well, that even the great rabbis of old were angry for one reason or another. The second thing I'll say very quickly, the most profound teaching I was ever taught in seminary was by Professor Leonard Kravitz, no relation to Lenny Kravitz. And he taught the following: always be yourself, unless you're a schmuck, in which case be somebody else. And for me, that story, and there's other stories like Georgia going to the beach, and if you're going to be a schmuck, be somebody else. And more importantly, if you're a congregant of somebody who's going to be a schmuck, try and be somebody else. Here's a friend of ours. Say hi.
Hi.
She just got back from bike riding. Oh, there she is.
Yeah.
All right, let me
Getting
finish
eaten up by the sign.
That's awesome, Matt. Yeah. I'm trying not to be the schmuck here. I
For
am
sure.
I am drawn to it was David Brooks did a piece in the Times, New York Times, the 26th, I think, of March. So whatever that was, not too long ago, citing Viktor Frankl in Man's Search for Meaning. We owe much to our rabbinic tradition, though Frankl wasn't a rabbi, into Judaism and through the Holocaust. And as you'll recall, in that school of psychotherapy, how vital it is to make meaning. And I in no way mean to align or make analogy of Shoah or Holocaust with where we are now, except to say for where there is fear and chaos as analogies. So that said, this namelessness or facelessness of virus, and that it's a purveyor of chaos. It's the maker of chaos. And so in our traditions, I think whether in Judaica or Christianity, we read texts like Genesis 1. And my impression now, Matt and Elizabeth, is no longer that Roman Catholic tradition of creation ex nihilo or creation out of nothing. Rather, it's creation out of chaos. And I owe that, in fact, Matt, to Rabbi Ed Goldman from Hebrew Union, Cincinnati, and from Richard Saracen, who, as Bible scholars, along with David Aaron, I think I remember them teaching that the tohu vavohu, the formlessness and void of Genesis 1, is the creation account not out of nothing, but out of chaos.
Right.
And that, to me, I have since the feeling of chaos in New Orleans, particularly 4 weeks ago, when it sort of dawned on us that I've held probably more to that tradition in making meaning and owe much to David Brooks via Viktor Frankl to say essentially that I think I find more fruit, more help in texts in our traditions as good Jews or good Christians that lead me to notion of what it means to gather together. And I'm gonna go now into John Wesley, our United Methodist forebearer, who had these three principles. Look, do no harm, do good, stay in love with God. And I think that's broad enough that we, whatever tradition we claim or no tradition at all in faith, can say, that makes sense. That when I know what I don't control, and there's so much I don't control, then what do we control? Well, in my own sphere, I can seek to do no harm, like not ask people to gather with me together to hurt one another, potentially.
Right.
Do good, which is to say, call on my neighbor right across the street, check with her, check with him, and to make sure from a distance, hey, do you need anything? And then that aspect that we are akin to in our traditions of stay in love with God, whether it's by sacrament of communion or by nature of celebrating Shabbat, that we are doing our best to control as we can, make decisions to stay in love with God together. I do not mean to diminish the necessary and important work of wrestling or navigating a question like, Lord, where are you? Or God, I don't know where you are right now, because that's a vital question. And I don't mean to give some crappy, easy answer, but to say again, where we can hold each other in doing no harm, doing good, and staying as best we can in love together with the divine.
Well, that makes me think, what does love look like, and what does love require of us, and how does love take shape in the world? I find it really helpful to remind people that anger has a role. anger is okay. Now what we do with it becomes the issue, right? But it's we don't need to be afraid of the feeling of anger and the chaos that's going on in New Orleans right now. Matt, I don't know what the numbers are in New York City, but in New Orleans, the numbers came out yesterday that 70% of the hospitalized cases are people of color, which of course is connected to people who are tied to jobs that require you either show up or you don't get paid. People who are not in situations where they have good health provider, like there are just all sorts of different injustices that are built into that, who don't have the luxury of, okay, well, I'll just stay home for the next 3 months and keep ordering things online. Like they're the people who are dropping stuff off at my front door. So, I mean, that's an overly simplistic of that representation of those statistics, but what do we do with that anger too? And asking the question, where is God of all of this? And where does love compel us to act? And I don't have answers to that right now. I'm still figuring out, like, my goodness, how do you do justice and embody love when you're scared to leave your house because you think you're going to get this virus that shuts your lungs down? I don't have answers, but I also think that's another opportunity to say, here I am.
Yeah.
We'll sit with these questions.
Yeah, no, Liz, I think that's huge. And I think when looking at NOLA today, NOLA.com and those statistics, and to hear our governor, to hear our Senator Cassidy, Lord, I'm going to riff hard here. Yes, agreed, where we have neglected, by my privilege, by others' privilege, if you identify, to seek an active source of justice for healthcare for all.
Yeah.
Then the question, as you were articulating, Elizabeth, does have to do with, at some point, and that, Lord willing, in the next month or 2 or 3, what have we learned from this? Well, for goodness sake, let's at least learn that those who are underserved, those who are marginalized, do indeed, by the nature of their being in the image of God Almighty, deserve good care, access to care, and to be empowered or encouraged, equipped to be able to access care. I think that's a huge issue, and I just will leave that there. That you're right on, and I think Rabbi, from your teaching and what you know, and Elizabeth, your work together, y'all in your own places do so much with social justice, that I get inoculated, in more ways than one. That, man, I mean, there are folks all around me right here who have not seen a primary care physician in how long?
Right.
Because they have no care. They have no access to care. And I need to help care for them in the days ahead for a systemic and policy related change. So
sure. There was also a company list that came out with those numbers yesterday about underlying health conditions, which to the lay people who hear comorbidities, I mean, it sounds so terrifying and big, but it's stuff like obesity and hypertension and asthma and things that are like ticking away boxes. So yeah, there's work to be done, and of like, let's get on the hamster wheel and go and do, but work that needs to be coming from a place of love, that needs to be rooted in love that we know is of God, because that's what we're called to embody.
That last part, can I just add a short little piece? Because I think it's really important. I heard a great sermon a number of years ago where the rabbi was saying, people often say, oh, I'm not religious, but I'm spiritual. And of course, that age-old question of, well, what does spirituality mean? And he had an interesting take on it, and I think it relates to love, that the first half of spirituality, the first half of love, can be essentially whatever you want it to be. It's the second half where you actually go do something. Mm-hmm. That's really the important part of love, of spirituality. The age-old cliche, it's not just about talking the talk, but walking the walk. that it really doesn't matter how you define it the first part. It only matters what you do with it for the second part, and that's doing something. And I think, Jay, that you are right. It will be very hard, and it will be interesting. Let's mark it down on the calendar to come back X number of days, weeks, months, maybe even years from now, and the three of us can have this conversation, hopefully over a cup of coffee in person, but if not over Zoom, to ask, what did we as a people, we as a community, we as a zip code, we as a city, we as a country, what did we learn, and how did we allow what we learned to change our behavior? That to me is going to be the most fundamental question of all.
Yep. Amen. Amen. And maybe, Matt, that's where I find these days, at least for right now, some hope, is that there seems to be a sense of empowerment, some sense of inspiration, even as religious community leaders, that we can provoke that question. So Elizabeth, as you said, I mean, what can we do to stand, if not out front, in amidst people and say, hey, we've got questions here that have to do with policy, that have to do with equanimity, that have to do with justice, which would have to do with love. As you said, Rabbi, I think that it is in the doing that there is meaning. I can say a whole lot of shit and not mean it, right, and not act on it. And I'm sure I'm guilty of that.
Or you can actually say a whole lot of you know what and mean it, but not do anything about it.
Yeah.
Right?
Great point. Yes.
Jay, I'm thinking about our tradition as who grew up evangelicals in Alabama, and how many times I was told that prayer was our opportunity to lay it down at the feet of Jesus. And whatever your burden was, you would lay it down at the feet of Jesus and leave it there. And it was as a young adult that I came across Ronald Rolheiser's book, The Holy Longing. Mm. And he says, our prayers need our flesh to back them up.
Yeah.
There are a lot of things that we may be praying right now, but are we willing to be participants in the answers that we're seeking?
Yeah.
Listen, our tradition is not too far off. We have the great story of Abraham Joshua Heschel marching with Dr. Martin Luther King. And at the end of that march, he said, it felt like I was praying with my feet.
Mm.
Nice.
That's good stuff.
It is. I appreciate this riff, y'all, because Matt, I remember enough to be dangerous in the Pirkei Avot.
We're like almost at 10. I'm going to count it back up.
Here it is. You ready? Vaha al Torah.
Yeah. Keep going.
And then Gemilut Chasadim.
Exactly. Acts of loving kindness, my friend.
That's it, right? It's the acts of loving kindness. And I don't mean to downplay it. I think you're spot on, dear sister, to say, and I continue to count myself an evangelical, as weird as that is to say, is liberal, like Jesus. That said, it is, Matt, those three things upon which the world stands that really strike me. And I think to the culmination of, whether it's Micah 6:8, whether it's Jesus and the coalescence of love the Lord, love our neighbor as we love ourselves, and the rabbis in the Tannaitic period who would say, well, upon three things the world is built, and short of me singing them to you and killing that, the last of those is Gemilut Chasadim, right? Matt, am I saying that close to right?
That's exactly right. Al HaTorah, Torah, learning, Al HaAvodah, worship, actually doing stuff, and Gemilut Chasadim, the acts that we do out in the world, acts of loving kindness.
Yeah. And I think, as you said, Elizabeth, animate prayer. They don't disavow it or diminish prayer. They incorporate that. And I think you're right on that's a deepening of the evangelical tradition that is a parallel and a beautiful, I think, complement to what we owe so much to in Judaism. And that sense of the rabbinic teaching that is very much a unitive consciousness, not a disparate consciousness, not a divided consciousness.
Right.
That while I seek compassion and mercy and justice and peace in the name of Jesus, I don't mean that as a divisive angle,
Right.
only the truth that I've encountered here. And there are other perspectives, God be praised, on truth that don't need to name Jesus.
Right.
And so that sense where you, Matt, and you, Elizabeth, have allowed me for 3 years to be completely and thoroughly Christian, and only by enhancing our own sense of what Judaism is, that there is a partnership and a love that I see and need in Judaism, and Matt, in the way you demonstrate it, and the way our other rabbi friends do, but Matt, for me, in my encounters with you, and Elizabeth, from, shades of Protestantism, God, we're all heading in that same direction, in the sense of whatever is the divine, that we want to embody it, and to gemilut chasadim, right?
Yeah. So I'm mindful of time and wanting us to be able to wrap up in the next 15 to 20 minutes. And I'm wondering, in all of this, because we've named a lot, how are you staying centered when you do have a moment? When it happens and you say, okay, there it is. What gets you there? I can go first while you think about it.
Please, yeah.
Fits and starts. First, let me say, I woke up on my own at 6:45 this morning, and my first thought was like, well, that's too early, because that's going to be a whole lot of day. And I went back to sleep. I was like, no, I'm not getting up at 6:45. So like, it's not like I really just figured this out. But there are a cluster of live oak trees around the corner from my house that make this, they touch the ground. So they were planted just perfectly apart, and they reach and they touch the ground, and there are all of these birds living in them. And so a couple different times I've walked over there and just stood underneath the trees. The druid that I am. Like, I love it. I love it. And we walk or drive up to the lakefront, and that is good. And anything I can do to get my hands in the soil. I mean, it's simple stuff. But there may be hours of resisting before I get there. Just to be clear, there may be hours of feeling the feelings and the whatever and pushing before I was like, oh, you need to go watch the birds for a little bit.
Yeah. Amen. Rabbi?
Or use different language. Mine is, how are you staying centered? But maybe how are you staying sane? Not to make light of mental illness, but
yeah.
How are you keeping whole? Have we lost him? Is he frozen again?
Matt, did you freeze up, man? Matt, if you can hear us. Oh,
blink. Oh no, there he is.
Sorry, I don't know what happened.
No, it's okay. I'm trying to decide, will I edit any of this out or just let it all go?
Listen, I wasn't talking, so I wasn't paying attention, so I logged off.
Okay, great. All right, bye-bye.
Sorry about that. No, you were talking. I heard about the oak trees around the corner. It sounded really nice. I'm sorry.
That's all right. So I was saying maybe you've got a better question than mine. If it's not how are you staying centered, then how are you staying sane? And I mean that without mocking, but truly.
Yeah. I find that I am playing a lot of piano that I haven't played in a very, very long time. And I'm singing a little bit, sometimes to somebody, sometimes to myself. I'm reconnecting with one of the things that has always been a regular part of my life in one form or another, and that's music. I'm trying to get my girls to join in with me. They're playing a lot of piano, and music has been a really nice way to not disconnect, but to connect, actually.
Yeah.
There's something very powerful about playing, singing when you're angry. There's really something interesting about, even if it's singing the love song when you're angry, there's something really not oxymoronic, but rather it's just all part of the same self. So music, I think, has been a really nice way of reconnecting. And then I'll just offer, somebody shared this tweet the other day from a tweet from 2030 about a kid who was 8 during the virus and is sitting in a college class and is talking about the virus of 2020. And the professor is going on about how hard life was, how terrible it was, how it was awful. And the kid, who's now a freshman in college, said, gosh, I remember sitting around the dinner table, having dinner with my parents every single night. I remember jigsaw puzzles. I remember making pieces of art and singing a lot of music. It was one of the most special times of my life. I don't know if we'll be there in 10 years. I don't know. It'd be really nice if my girls actually posted that 10 years from now. But there is this idea of perspective that has been helpful in these moments.
That's powerful. That perspective, that's a great word. And the simplicity word, Elizabeth, as you said, keeping it simple. Look, I mean, I'm alone corporally, most of the time here. So this means a lot. And I don't know that I'm lonely per se, because these opportunities with you as colleagues, with congregants, and that it means a lot. So I think, as you both know, I'm a pretty touchy fella, and not just emotionally, but like, hopefully not in a creepy way, but just, I really like touch, bodies. I like rubbing elbows. And I think that that's where, I don't know, I've not thought about it a whole lot. But as you said, Elizabeth, and as you said, Matt.
I keep on going in and out. I hope you can hear me, Jay.
Yeah.
That was just beautiful. Can you hear me or no?
We hear you.
Yeah, man. No,
I can see me, right?
Yeah.
We hear you.
Yeah, physicality, I think, is a thing. And I think that where we can feel viscerally, visceral. And I think, walks with the dog, seeing people here and just being distance, but being able to say, hey, is a great thing. Matt, you there, man?
I am. I'm really sorry. But I did want to just say, it's really, Jay, the part that I heard is really touching. I was thinking about, it's so crazy that you said exactly what you said. And the only part that I heard of what you said, I was actually thinking about, and it wasn't in a creepy way at all. I was thinking about, how is Jay going to touch us the way he always does whenever he hears something that he agrees with or that he likes. There's always that beautiful
touch the arm, squeeze the arm, squeeze the arm.
Yes, and Jay, brother, I was thinking today about how much I'm gonna miss that in our talk today, and yet it will come through in how we are experiencing all of this together. It came through loud and clear, brother. It did.
I appreciate it, big time. Thank you. And it's good. Friendships here are good. I think having a good friend through this, a best friend, is awesome, and not just my dog. but yeah, that's short of that. It is. It's fun to hear you, as parents, particularly, sort of observe that. I miss that, no doubt. I miss it, and yeah, but that's okay. I think the perspective is, yeah, of course you miss it. I mean, they're in different places, and yeah, short of that, I think to get to the answer, Liz, is just those walks with the dog. And I'll admit, I feel like I keep safe distance when I walk up to Ottoman Park and stay safe distance away. That's vital. If I wasn't doing that, I'd lose my freaking mind.
Yeah. I really love to laugh. I think you both know that I love stand-up comedy, and I will just rewatch a special whenever I need to. Brings me joy. Wonder, are there ways that you're finding a good laugh or moments of joy?
without sounding too, I don't want to end on a bad note, but during dinner, we have been telling a lot of stories of Leah's childhood, of my childhood, that gets the girls laughing. But other than, which is nice, but other than that, there aren't so many fits of laughter that I'm feeling. But that's okay. I think that's okay because I still feel intense connection with the people that are really special and meaningful to me. And in fact, some of those connections are continuing to grow and grow and grow. And that has been very profound and significant for me.
Yeah. That's cool, man. I think the laughs, really, Elizabeth, have come from the book you gave me, allowed me to read.
Good.
Pete Holmes. Shout out to you, Pete Holmes, wherever you are, and Comedy Sex God. That's a terrific work, and it goes devotional and spiritual in a way I wouldn't have anticipated. That's one, and then I have read more just for fun. That work, The Water Dancer by Ta-Nehisi Coates?
Ta-Nehisi Coates.
Yes, thank you. By Coates. It was fantastic. And other stuff. But that said, it's, I think the joy has been in more simplicity, cooking more here, and with Carrie coming over, which has been a blessing too. So yeah, it's good. It's all in all, it is. It's a silver lining. And I'm looking for more than I would have before too. So there's that.
Yeah, I think just noticing is a big skill to cultivate. It's a simple skill to cultivate, but noticing allows us those moments of joy. The simple things, like we moved a bench to our front stoop. It's not even really, you can't even call it a porch, but it's this place to sit. And I see neighbors go by, and real joy in that. But I still need like a good belly laugh. It'd be happening every day, but I'm chasing it. So Nailed It on Netflix just came out with a new season this week where they bring people in who don't know how to bake, and then they have them make really complicated things. And it's always horrible. So I like that show a lot. So guys, I love you. I wish we could have a big snuggle right now.
Yeah, really special. Liz, I'm really glad you did this.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thanks for your time, and keep texting and call whenever. And I look forward to our reunion on the other side of this.
Amen. Amen.
Bless you and keep you. See y'all.
Bye, guys.
Love you.